Hey quilt makers, any of you just get a long arm frame or brand new to long arming, or maybe have had a long arm frame for a long time but you're kind of intimidated on the basic setups on how to load it? Well, let's try that out for today's video. Are you ready? Let's get started. So quilters, let's go ahead and get a couple of terms out of the way real quick. I'm going to speak in real generic fashion, and I'm probably going to make up words that aren't even in your owner's manual. But let's get to know our frame, because this is what we're loading. It doesn't matter what machine you have, but you probably have 5 rails to your frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, and way down here is 5. So let's start with number 5. That's your batting rail, or that's where most of your batting will live when it's not going into the quilt. A lot of us just float our batting. We'll get back to that in a minute. So this rail doesn't even really count for loading so much. Your top upper rail here is going to be what I refer to as your take-up rail. This is taking up all of the quilt after it's been quilted. Your next rail, number 2, is your tensioner rail. This is going to keep our fabric taut as it goes under, and we want, our whole goal is to have everything flat here, just like if we were quilting it on a table or a hand quilting frame, right? This whole balance piece, this whole level, we want to keep flat, if we will. Therefore, this upper rail is actually for the back of the quilt, and this lower rail is for the upper or the top of the quilt. So just kind of opposite. As I get ready to load, I'll show you that. Now I have gone with the real generic basic route. I have Velcroed on leader strips made of canvas. I did go ahead and mark out on my strip the edge of where my machine can reach. So I will never put my quilt top past this line because I wouldn't be able to put any thread through it that way. First thing we're going to do is we're going to load out our quilt backing to the frame to the take-up rail first. The reason I'm doing the take-up rail first is I want to use the frame itself to create tension as I roll and unroll the fabric so that I get a really nice, flat, smooth layering system. Okay, so this is going to go this way for me. And remember, it's a quilt, so it's going to go face down. And I'm laying it intentionally over the top of the backing rail so that I can use this tension later. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pinch together south of, and remember, my quilt's going to have 3 or 4 inches also to spare of backing and batting. So right now I can start my backing here, and then I'll start my quilt in a few more inches, and I'm going to fold them over, and I'm going to use safety pins about every 6 to 8 inches, and I'm just going to pull tension, lock that piece, pin it, move down the line about a hand's distance, and pin it from one end to the next, keeping this all nice and flat. The leader strips were purchased with the rails, so everything was done nicely. You can make them yourself out of canvas, but you can see they're very clean and straight. Keeping things straight as we load is really important. All the way down here to the end, I will pin. No shortcuts. So if I need to, I'll place one at that hand's distance and then just a few more inches away at that very end. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to lock in the cleats or the tensioning mechanism on the take-up rail. This has a hand crank on my system, so as I hand crank, oops, let's watch out for my needle over here. Everything off to a good start. What I'm going to start to look at is that the backing of the quilt just glides nice and flat underneath here. And then I will continually go up and down the frame, smoothing, watching for ripples, and making sure that these lines on the edge don't start to cone out. Of course, you can roll your bar from anywhere, but you don't want to twist your fabric when doing so. You can see I'm using both hands And see this ripple that's forming? I need to work this out. And this is why pinning to the top works so great first. Because what's going to happen is we're going to take all this fabric this way, and then we're going to go ahead and pin the bottom end of the quilt backing to the backing rail. And then we're going to unclick that cleat, show you in a second, and we're going to pull it all this way, keeping super nice tension, keeping the backing really nice and crisp. And that's the trick here that I'm trying to just demonstrate. We're not going to start with it all up here. We're just cranking it all up here so that we can back roll it, once again confirming it's perfectly smooth and straight. So don't kill yourself now, but do a real nice job. Another trick is you may want to have your thread out of the needle of your machine so it doesn't get caught up, wrapped up in there. That's what's happening right now as my thread wants to go for a ride. So I'll just cut it nice and short, keep it out of the way. Okay, so I just cleared that space, and I want to point out again that that was all done with the backing under the tensioner bar. So this is just keeping the fabric taut. So it's all the way on the upper flat here. I don't want to make the mistake of pinning it down and forgetting to get underneath here. Do the same thing. My first thing I'm doing is letting my eyeball come across here and make sure everything is nice and square and parallel, using my frame as a guide. And then I'll begin pinning the back end or the bottom end of the backing to this bottom leader strip on the backing bar. Doing the same method where I pinch and pull, confirming that is the same distance of fabrics. Drop a safety pin. Move on down the line. And once that last pin is in, that's where the magic's going to really happen, okay? So now again, I'm going to confirm everything's going to lay nice and flat. I might even want to move my machine more towards the middle of my project so that it's not catching on either edge and the edges are coming through smooth. I'm going to unlock the cleats or the tension up here on my upper bar, and then I'm going to begin pulling tension, rolling. And I have a lot of extra fabric on the bottom end, so my quilt won't be coming right here. I have several extra inches. But now you can see as I turn with one hand down here, it's causing the upper bar to rotate and how nice and flat the quilt backing is staying. At this moment, please confirm your fabric is face down for your backing or you're going to be super frustrated down the road. Keep rolling and smoothing, using your hands to keep your fabrics really nice as you go through. Okay, now watch this. We always talk about having extra backing 4 to 8 inches in all directions. So I'm 4 in all directions, 8 laterally and vertically. So you notice right here, if I stop, I can now lock in my clamp, pull, and we're going to hear it, hopefully click, excuse me. I need to lock down here too. There's a click. Now I can come up here, one more click, and I have nice light tension all the way across. You can see I've got a little gapping in my safety pin, so I don't want to pull any tighter than that. But now I'm going to go ahead and float in the batting. So that's some of that extra inch space. So none of that up there will be quilted, but that gives me the room to not worry about a thing. So now I'll go ahead and slide my machine back out of the way. And even though the batting goes next, we're not going to tend to it till last because I want to be able to do the same trick with the quilt's top. So please note, I've already pinned the quilt top now, just to save time in the video, all the way along the bottom rail or the quilt top's rail. And now I'm going to take that quilt top and I'm going to float it over the whole frame where those leader strips are, and they have tension on them because that's going to allow me to do the same thing in the reverse order as I roll the quilt top. Some folks will float their quilt tops, but I like this method because I'm watching both parallel along the quilt and the frame, but what I'm really watching is my seam allowance is constantly on this bar here as it splits over to make sure that my quilt is staying very nice and square to my frame. Okay, so as I'm going to go ahead down here now, I'm going to actually lock in my tension cleats. You can hear them clicking like a roller coaster at an amusement park. I just love it. Check to make sure your leaders aren't twisting. Make sure also you don't have anything else caught in here. And again, go through and smooth. Nice and slow, watching your seam allowances as you go. Roll from both sides. Pick any threads because you don't want them there in the long run. And if you need, re-spread across the top bar. You see how wonderful that's working for us right now to keep that tension and how beautiful that's being that third set of hands. So again, I'm just gonna come through here, tending to my patchwork, tending to my threads. And then periodically, because I'm just throwing that top over, I'm just gonna straighten things out. Anytime things start to go sideways or twist, give it a little tug in the direction necessary and confirm it's lined itself back up. Keep that tension going. And now you notice the quilt top just came over. So I'm basically going to lose most all of my tension there. And that's okay because I'm going to float my batting in, but I'll also often just let the quilt top now fall. I believe there's greater weight this way. And I will just tidy it up as I come across here. I don't need to bring too much up. It's more to get that out of my way for the backing. As a reminder, that quilt top was face up. Our backing is face down, and now here comes the batting. And for me, I am a batting floater, so I'm going to make sure that I have the correct width here and here, and I'm going to slide it under my needle, and I'm just going to kind of barely tuck an edge so it stays out of my way up and under that rail for now. And now I'm going to take all of the batting and I'm going to push it between the quilt's top and the quilt's backing rails. Remember, the backing rail is above the top rail. So now it falls in between the quilt, just where it's supposed to be. My preferred method here is I'm going to bring my top up and just out of the way for now. We'll keep adjusting in a moment. And now I'm going to take my backing and I'm just going to kind of drape it, accordion style, over that lower bar. It'll need tending to throughout the quilting process a little bit, but this is going to keep me from stepping on it, tearing it, doing anything that I don't want to have happen to that. Before I go any further, I'm going to fire up the machine, and then I'm going to come up here. Remember, I have extra backing and batting, and I'm going to drop my needle down, bring it up to confirm I have my bobbin thread here secured. I'm going to let the edge of the machine run along the edge of that top bar because it actually kind of helps me have a nice straight line. And what I'm doing now is obviously stitching just the batting to the quilt's backing for security. So we don't need any more pins here. You can see the needle has gone further than the quilt. That makes me real happy. When I get to this end, I'm going to tie off that thread. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut thread and start again from the other end because that's my personal comfort level. Now I'm going to loosen tension on the quilt top's rail and I'm going to actually give it a little slack, pull it away, and drop it up just about to that line. I know I can't stitch any further than that line, but I also don't really want to have to be riding the machine while I'm working on putting the quilt down. So now I'm going to use that line as a guideline, set my quilt, and do the same thing where I lock down my threads. And I'm going to stitch a very fine edge line, if I can, along the edge of this quilt top to now secure all 3 layers, the backing, the batting, and the backing, the batting, and the quilt top all together. So I've got a stitch regulator engaged to help me stay calm. And I'm keeping my hand, as you'll notice, in front of the needle because I want to be able to push the fabric kind of right where I want to go. This will most likely be trimmed off right before I put the binding on after all the machine quilting. This is also why folks talk about if you're going to do a quilt to have it be long-armed, you may want to actually even add a little extra fabric along that one edge so that you or your long armer can secure, and it doesn't take much. Remember, we would normally be doing it with safety pins, but could secure your quilt before the last tensioning step, which I'll show you here in a second. Again, lock that off. I'm going to move my machine out of the way one more time. Now I'm going to really calibrate all my tensions, my backing first. So now I'm coming down to this backing rail, and it's got a lot of bounce to it, and I don't care for that. So I'm going to give it one more click now that everything's secured. I will also pull side tension using clamps or my hands as I approach the sides. My eyes are going to now go to this seam allowance along this upper rail, and I will pull tension and lock until I see everything kind of clamped down. You'll notice that took a lot of the bounce out. And then I will slowly machine quilt this first series of blocks, and then it will become more and more stable as I work my way through. But this isn't about machine quilting, it's about getting ready to machine quilt. And now you no longer have a decent excuse to not load up your long arm frame and get to your practicing. So thanks for joining me today here at Sew Well with Rob Appell. Let me know what else I can teach you in the comments below. Until I see you again, folks, please stay well.